In our second rider and rig video, which is an extension of what we have been publishing on BIKEPACKING.com for about 6 years now, we sit down with ultra-endurance veteran Jefe Branham, who is set to take on the Arizona Trail Race 800 starting Thursday morning. Jefe is no stranger to these types of events, participating in self-supported bikepacking races since 2006. Jefe has accomplished everything from the Tour Divide and Colorado Trail Race wins, and has loads of experience and knowledge when it comes to multi-day events. And you will definitely notice that in this video. So enjoy the video and good luck to all the racers this year.
Neil just laughs.
I can't even imagine with 800 now.
My name is Jefe Branham. I'm 49 years old, and I live in Gunnison, Colorado. I work at Double Shot Cyclery as a bike mechanic and in sales. So the Arizona Trail 800 is a mostly single track route that goes from the Mexican border all the way to the Utah border. And it's extremely challenging for many reasons. The terrain is often really rocky and rough. There's a lot of hike-a-bike. Water is a challenge. Resupply is a challenge, and to top it all off, you get to take your bike apart and hike through the Grand Canyon, where bikes aren't allowed to be wheels on the ground. Yeah, the challenges of the AZT are kind of numerous and somewhat daunting, to be honest. So yeah, I've been interested in the Arizona Trail for a really long time. The first time I heard about it was when I did the Grand Loop with Scott Morris, and he had just basically started the Arizona Trail race at that point, and I think it was just a 300 at that point, and he later developed the 750, and I was actually training to do it back in 2011, and I decided to do the Tour Divide instead that year, and I've also done the 300 in 2009 and 2010. That's why I was going to go back in 2011 and do the full 8, I guess it was the 750 at that point. So yeah, it's always been on my radar, and I've always wanted to do it. The race being in the spring was always tough timing for me because working in a bike shop in the mountains, that's when things get busy, and taking 2 weeks off at that time of the year was never really an easy thing to do. Now that the race has moved to the fall, it's a little bit easier for me to get time off from work. I finally just decided that this year was the time to do it, and just time to stop putting it on the back burner. Yeah, I'm riding Weiss Cycles El Jefe, which is actually my signature bike, and I was approached by Chris Reichel a few years ago about creating basically a pro model bike. Chris was really into skateboarding growing up, and he always thought that the pro deck was a really cool concept, and so he kind of wanted to do the same thing with a bike. And so yeah, he approached me, and we basically started working on what I wanted out of a bike. You know, we took some numbers that I had in my head, and they kind of fed that into some people who know more about bikes, and we came up with this frame. Riding it single speed, this is my favorite bike I've ever had, and I love riding single speed. I've got a really nice squishy bike with electronic shifting, and I always ride this bike. It's a fantastic bikepacking bike. It's got good bag space, and it's been super reliable, and I love this bike a lot.
I just want to take a brief moment to let you all know that this video is supported in part by Terravel Tires. Like many cycling brands, there's a passionate group of cyclists behind Terravel. Their tires are designed and inspired by routes and terrain they've ridden. And that's why you may notice Terravel tire models are named after regions with distinct terrain and even specific trails in some cases. So to learn more about Terravel's development process and a bit more about their tire models, you can click on this card right here, or there's a link provided below.
My bike is set up. I got Revel rims. I'm running a Paul rear hub, a Sun Dynamo front hub. I'm running a 3022 drivetrain this year. I've got a Pike Ultimate fork set with 130 travel on the front. I'm running the Fast Company flex bars on the front, ergon grips. I got inner bar ends. I got tape all over everything. Got a 1-Up 150 dropper on the back with the little wolf tooth Vialis thing on there. Carbon X01 cranks, XT pedals, Guide G2 brakes. I think that pretty much rounds out the bike itself. Oh, Maxxis Recon tires and a 29x26. I got the EXO Plus on the back, standard EXO on the front. I am running a Tubo Light insert on the back. I think I got orange seal in there. Oh, ergon saddle, ergon grips. I got my bike outfitted with bags. I'm running a J-Pax Supreme Burrito on the front, where I'm going to be carrying my shelter and pretty much all my clothing. I'm going with a fairly light kit, but it's also more clothes than I've taken on a summer bike packing race, so I feel pretty good about that. I've got a homemade frame bag, which I'll be mostly carrying food and water, and a few things like batteries and stuff like that. A homemade seat bag, and actually the only thing in there is my additional stuff for the canyon portage. So I've got a whole bunch of extra Velcro and webbing straps, and a little bit of extra padding for my my shoulder straps on my pack. J-Pax footlong for food. J-Pax feed bag here, where I'm basically just carrying my water filter. And then I also have a Bedrock Tapetes bag, where I'm just carrying electronics. I'll have my phone, a cache battery, and a few extra headlamp batteries in there. And then I've got a down tube bag down here that's homemade. And there's just tubes, sealant, extra bike stuff, spokes, kind of the oh shit kit down there. This year for lighting, I'm bringing two Phoenix BC26Rs. I've got one on my helmet, a little homemade mount that I made, one on my handlebar. I'm also running a K-Lite Pro, the kind of older, smaller dynamo light, and a Sun Dynamo hub. Yeah, this is a relatively new light from Phoenix. I had been using their PD35 flashlights for a long time, but this now uses a little bit bigger capacity battery, which I've had pretty good luck with. So you get a little bit more power out of each battery. I'm still bringing quite a few batteries, but I have really been testing the lights. I did the Loopy Loop, which is my own bike packing race, about 6 weeks ago, and I was just running the BC26 combo, and I was wishing I had a little bit more light, and since then I've been experimenting back with the Dynamo and the K-Lite Pro, and I found the mix of the three to be much better. I can run these on a little bit lower power and conserve my batteries a little bit more and still light up the trail pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good about my light setup. Lights are always a constant evolution for me. I'm always trying stuff, and so yeah, I'm sure I'll come back from this with a little bit more information to go into that process. I'm also running an Etrex, classic Etrex 20 on the handlebar. I'll be running that off just lithium AA's. I also have my phone with Gaia, and I guess it's called Far Out guides on that as backup. Carrying a fairly large pack. I've got what is this thing? The Stratos 24 from Osprey. And basically this is the smallest pack I could find that has a frame. I experimented with a few other carrying systems briefly, and I really wanted to have a frame to distribute the weight onto my hips. That's the key to getting the weight onto your hips and not just on your shoulders. I don't normally like to ride with a pack, so it's definitely been a little bit of an adjustment. I did the Loopy Loop with this just to kind of get used to it, and I have adapted to it somewhat, and it doesn't drive me totally crazy. But it's definitely going to be a compromise because I am going to start with this pack. I'm not going to do a post office drop or anything like that. So I will be starting with this pack and essentially just carrying a 3-liter bladder of water and a few odds and ends. So I won't really have much weight on my back, but it's not a light pack in and of itself. That frame definitely makes it a little bit heavier, but it does make it a little bit more supportive for carrying. I've done a couple of good hikes with it. And it's definitely been a learning process. That was the biggest suggestion I got from people who have done the race before, was to practice that. And so I did. And it was interesting. I did a couple 6-mile hikes that were pretty okay. And then I did an 11-mile hike, and that was eye-opening. After the 6-mile mark, things got really interesting. And I got home and, I made a bunch of notes in my head, got home and made some adaptations to it. As far as how I'm strapping it on, it's actually pretty straightforward with this pack. I take my front wheel off, I turn my handlebars and attach them to my frame. I lock my pedals in place with another strap, and then I use 4 straps to attach to the, for each strap, I tried to use 2 strong contact points. So for the top, I attach it to the little crank down points here and this little handle, and then to the bottom I was hooking it through here and through here, so that I'm getting a good amount of the structure of the pack. And then I have a couple more straps to attach to my rear wheel, to my frame, and that's essentially it. Rear wheel ends up above my head, fork is down, yeah, I've got a couple extra pads that I'm putting underneath my shoulder straps. That's one of the things I learned on my longer hike, was I definitely started digging in a little bit, and a couple things I was also going to do with my hip belt to make that a little bit more comfortable. I'm sure it's still going to be pretty awful, because it's a lot of weight and it's still not exactly a huge pack. So it's definitely a compromise, but I feel like it's a pretty good compromise. And I've gotten it pretty efficient. I've timed myself every time I've done the transition, and even when I'm not moving fast, I can get the bike on the pack in about 10 minutes. I can put it back together in about 5. I've got it set up so I can put this pack, this little J-Packs, on my sternum strap, so I can use it for snacks, and I can also access the footlong while I've got it on my back so I can get to food. So I've definitely put some thought into the process, and I'm hoping that pays off, because everybody tells me the canyon is just awful. And so yeah, I'm trying to make it as enjoyable as I can. My favorite trail in the Gunnison Valley is Falsa Ridge. Probably fajitas. My favorite dinner is probably fajitas. I love good Mexican food. Yeah, I guess my favorite band is my daughter singing. Become Jay Wookstar on Instagram. I think that's my Instagram handle. I don't know, I just pushed the button.
Thanks, Jefe.
Yeah, of course.